So we are in the middle of just a real short series looking at the subject of relationships. Last week we looked at marriage, and today we're going to look at friendship. Now, if I'm being really honest, growing up, I grew up on a council estate and on multiple council estates. We moved around quite a lot because we were subject to kind of social housing and the processes of that. And so actually I found it quite hard to make friends. I was also a bit of a strange kid in that I read a lot. So while my brother and my sister were hanging out on the council estate, I was inside reading Dickens. You know, I was a bit of a weird kid. And then we moved around so much that I went to 3 different secondary schools. So kind of bouncing around a lot meant that it was quite difficult to make friends. It was only when I started going to church when I was about 16 where I started to make friendships that I knew kind of lasted. But don't get me wrong, right? Some of those friendships were proper weird. Like a bit crazy. Considering all my friendships before going to church were kind of meeting up in a park, drinking some Lambrini, doing something criminal, and then going home, I then started to make Christian friends, and I had 2 mates in particular, Danny and Andre, and we would have a sleepover every Friday night at one person's house. It would never be my house. It would be at their nice Christian homes. And what would happen, quite often we'd have dinner, it was all very nice, often pizza, and then we'd do the thing. And what the thing was, someone would sit in the middle, and then the other 2 would pray and ask that God would give them words from the Bible or pictures that would encourage them, and then we'd share them, and then we'd go to the next one. It was leagues apart from the kind of thing I was doing on Friday nights before that. But then it even got weirder, because what we'd do after that, once we all prayed for each other and had words and pictures that were encouraging and all that stuff, we would then open up the book of Revelation and bring up BBC News. And we would try and map, we'd be like, what's been going on in world affairs, and how close are we to Jesus returning, right? It was a bit weird. But those guys, they were lovely, Danny and Andre, and they're both vicars as well now. But those friendships also, we were at the same time starting out preaching, and so we'd often bring our scripts and test it out in front of each other. And I had started leading worship, and so I'd be like, what do you think about this song? And I'd play it to them. But we also chatted about all kinds of things. We debated theology, asked each other questions about dating and marriage and careers later on and uni choices. Now, sociologists say that you are the average of your 5 closest people to you. Right, so if you think of the 5 people close to you, it might be a family member, it might be a spouse, it might be a boyfriend, girlfriend, but you are the average of the 5 closest people to you. That's physically, financially, spiritually, emotionally. You're the average of the 5 close people to you. And friends like Danny and Andre raise that average for me in terms of my biblical and spiritual walk with Jesus. But I've also been hurt by friends, as I'm sure you have. I've had friends, really, really, really good Christian friends, who have seemingly cut me off without any real explanation. I've had friends who have stirred up others against me because I'd said or done something silly that upset them. I've had really good friends find the way that I lead church or the way I live my life in some way offensive to them, and so they use me as an emotional or theological punch bag, often in my Instagram DMs. Sometimes it just feels easier, if I'm being honest, to keep everyone at a bit of arm's distance and never go deep at risk of hurting yourself, right? Anyone else feel a bit like that sometimes? Okay, 2 of us, bro. I'm preaching to you guys. Now, there is a friendship crisis in our time, right? The average person spends 4 hours a month on friendships. 4 hours a month on friendships. Our country, the great United Kingdom, is the only country in the world that has a minister for loneliness. Because it knows there's such a big problem, let's employ someone to deal with it. Men have a huge issue with loneliness. In 2021, there was a study done that found that 15% of men claim that they don't have a single close friend. I read a really good book about men and why they find it difficult to make friends called Billy No Mates by a comedian called Max Dickens. Fascinating read. If you're a guy in the room and you're lonely and you don't know how to make friends or you don't know why you can't make friends, I highly recommend you pick it up. Some of it's inappropriate. Don't tell your mum it was your pastor who recommended it. But why does it matter? Well, the thing is, for all kinds of reasons, but the main one is we were never meant to do this Christian thing alone. Even if you're married or you've got a long-term partner, you should constantly ask yourself the question, how are we working on our friendship, not just how are we managing our household or keeping love alive? The thing that has kept my faith on track, has improved my marriage, has had an effect on my physical fitness, has helped me become a better parent, is the advice and support and wisdom from friends. Now, Jesus had his followers, right? 5,000, we're told at one point, a huge amount of people. He then had a team that he was able to commission and send out, 72 of them, that he sent out to raise the dead and cleanse the sick and all that great stuff. He then had his disciples, 12 close friends, but he then had a core of 3, Peter, James, and John. Now, friendships are always hard because they take work. Being part of a crowd does not take work. That's like your postcode. Your neighbors don't, they just happen to be your neighbors. There's no obligation these days to get to know them. If you like the way they put their bins out in the morning, or you like the way they shove their kids in the car on the school run, then you might start up a conversation, but there's no expectation, right? Anyone else judge someone based on how they put bins out in the morning? Yeah, a few of us. I'm like, put it straight. It's not difficult, right? Even being part of a team, you see your colleagues because you're paid to see them. And it's probably in your best interest, both for your mental health and for the progression of your career, to get on with them. But they don't need to know your kids' birthdays, do they? Your close friends, that 12, it's super important. This might be your group at church. They should know a lot about you. They should know when you're sick or when you have a job interview coming up. They should be praying for which school your kids are going to or what course you're thinking about studying. And they should celebrate anniversaries and special occasions with you. But here's the kicker. How is your core? Who knows your secret sin? Who are you sharing your doubts and your pain with? Who would you have watch over you when you have anxious nights like Jesus in Gethsemane? Well, one of my closest friends is also a vicar in the Church of England in Coventry, and I wanted to get him up because over the course of these 3 weeks we're doing conversations, and I wanted to get him up, but he's busy because it's a Sunday. And I could just tell you about our friendship and let you know everything about how we do it and how we do it over long distance, but I thought it'd be good for you to hear from him, so we filmed a little conversation this week, and here it is.
How you doing, mate? How you doing? I do remember how we met. It was a long time ago now, though.
A few years.
What we're talking, over 15 years, 20
I was 18.
years. So, well, you can do the maths then.
Well, I'm 37 this year.
Yeah. So that's high pressure maths live on camera.
18 years? 18
yeah,
years.
it was a long time ago. We met, didn't we, at Youth Work Conference? And yeah, we met, and I think we just clicked, didn't we? I think there was just something there that we were into the same stuff. We were, I think our...
we bullied a mutual friend for a weekend.
Okay, I wasn't going to say that on camera. Cool. As long as it's okay to say that. We bullied a mutual friend for a weekend. We bonded over bullying?
Yep, something like that.
That's not going to be one of your points in your sermon, is it?
But then we carried on seeing each other for, like, annually.
Yeah.
And I always loved a couple of things about you. You've got a great sense of humour, so I was excited to see Ben. I loved your taste in music, so it was the days of MySpace, and we'd send each other recommendations around bands and stuff. Yeah. And I also thought you're a couple of years older than me, and I thought, oh, he's just someone who's doing some really great youth work that I could kind of be inspired by as I was kind of venturing out into that. But then we saw each other at a conference or something, and we realised we only lived at that point an hour away from each other. Yeah. And that we should hang out more.
Yeah. And we kind of decided, didn't we? Well, actually, let's hang out more. Let's make this a thing. And so our days off were the same.
Yeah.
On Mondays. A Monday, yeah. And so I would drive down to Cheltenham every Monday.
We'd go in charity shops.
We'd get a bit
of lunch, and they would play board games.
Yeah.
And we brought our wives together.
Yep.
And so we would have dinners together, and then we also started holidaying together.
We did.
We had kids around the same time.
We did. Yeah.
And then we both at the same time went forward for ordination in the Church of England.
Yeah, we did.
And I remember this like very well, in that I kept it a bit coy as to which college I was going to train at.
Yeah.
And I kind of knew I was going to go to train in this college in London. I was a bit nervous about telling you because I thought you might have opinions about it. And we kind of did a kind of 3, 2, 1, where are you going?
Yeah.
And we both said the same college.
Yeah.
And so for 3 years we then trained together.
Our friendship's been quite cheesy, isn't it? A lot of this stuff is very...
I mean, it's beautiful, mate.
3, 2, 1, reveal!
But then when we train together, it gets weirder.
Yeah.
We had to go away once a month for residential training, and most people get their own bedroom. Yet we used to ask if we could share a bedroom
Yeah.
as two grown men.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that lady who we were at the desk, and the lady, remember this, and she said, and we were getting our keys for our rooms, and she said, "Oh, I've put you in room 220. I've put you in room 350." I remember you looking at her and said, "Can we share a room?" Do you remember? And she said, "But I've put you in two separate." I was like, "Yeah, can we just share one?" She was like, "Okay." That's really weird, but okay.
And I also remember we did we had to go on like a spiritual retreat, and it was like in some like monastery or something. And again, they gave us all spare rooms, all our own rooms, and I said to the person with the keys, I was like,
Probably a monk.
"By the way, we want to share a room." And there was a dual purpose to that. One, we wanted to hang out and chat late into the night and swap manly stories. But also, we recorded a podcast together.
We did.
So I'd have all my recording equipment, and we recorded a board game themed podcast.
Yeah.
And but yeah, we've holidayed together.
Yeah.
Now we see each other probably 3-4 times a year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the journey of our relationship.
Yeah, it is. There you go. What a journey.
Where are we different?
Where are we different? Not much.
There's a few things. Our music tastes have
Yeah.
differed.
Yeah, they have. Yeah.
You've got a bit more Radio 4.
I've got a bit more talk sport, is what I would.
Yeah.
Yeah, music taste definitely differed, hasn't it? I've got a bit more folk, I think, in my old
I think
age.
when we first got together, when we first became friends, it was like in the Damien Rice era.
Yeah.
And so like we were loving.
So I've always been folk, is what you're
So
saying.
it was like Damien Rice, a bit of Bon Iver's first stuff,
Yeah,
a bit of Jeff Buckley.
Yeah.
And now that taste has broadened a bit, and I think I would say I could probably listen to most things, whereas I think your taste has is slightly narrower.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
Where else do we differ?
I don't.
So we both lead churches.
Yeah. So.
And our leadership styles will be different.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I think our leadership style is different. Although we've never worked in the same church, it'd be interesting to.
No, do you think that's the reason?
That might be the reason.
There's a reason. Yeah.
I want our friendship to continue.
I think you're incredibly patient, and you are. I think one of the beautiful things I see in you is whatever's in front of you, you're immediately present to that. I think one of my flaws is that I can be future focused too much, and think about the next thing or where's the next like area for growth. And I think we probably differ in that.
I think I'm glad you said that, because it kind of given me permission to say this, is that I think one of the things that I look up to you about you, and I wish I had more of in me, is a decision maker. I think you're very good at making decisions and sticking to decisions. And so yes, you're right. I'm in the moment and present. I think you're right about that. But that does also mean I don't make decisions, and often things can just get pushed down the line. Whereas you're very good at doing that. And I think you're also big picture vision, the next 5 years.
Yeah.
And because I'm so present in the moment, I don't really think like that. That's one thing that I think is unique about our friendship, with regard to some of my other friendships, is we can have it out about something and know that at the end of it we'll still be absolutely where we were at the start of it or before it. I really like that about us. I can't think of any times where we've had such a big argument or disagreement that it's affected our friendship. Yeah. Which I think is really good, really healthy.
But I think there have been times where we disagreed on stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like we disagree sometimes on churchy stuff. We might disagree on the 1975. We might disagree on Coldplay. Ben's a huge Coldplay fan.
Listen, my theory is it's cool to hate Coldplay.
I just want to be cool.
Yeah,
I think most people think I'm pretty cool, so I'm definitely smashing that target.
Right.
I mean, we might disagree on more serious things as well. But I think what we tend to do, and I don't always get this right in every relationship, but what we tend to do is we'll talk about the thing rather than each other when it comes to that. So rather than it being about you being a awful person because you like Ed Sheeran and Coldplay.
I don't like Ed Sheeran.
Oh, you've become cool too now.
No, man, I've never. No, you must you delete that. That's never been a thing from the very beginning.
Okay,
no way.
But you might like Coldplay, and you might have a wristband still from a previous gig you went to. But but we talk about the thing,
Yeah.
And so even if it's church stuff, then I think we're quite good at tabling the thing that we're talking about, and it not being about a thing about me and how I'm wired, but let's talk about the thing. I think we're pretty good at that.
Yeah, me too.
And I also think that we're pretty quick to apologise.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can think of times where I've had to apologise to you for the way I've spoken or what I've done, and I think that also helps. I think there's lots of friendships that just don't do that part
Yeah.
right, you know?
Yeah. And you know, and I wouldn't want to be friends with somebody who I agree on absolutely everything on.
Yeah, it'd be pretty boring.
It would be a pretty boring friendship, wouldn't it? As long as you know I'm right about all those things, that's fine too.
You're not right about Coldplay. I think encouraging each other in our faith is a major component of our friendship, and it's also what gives me a lot of joy. I remember a few years ago, we had both been really inspired to not just read our Bibles and pray every day if you want to talk to Jesus, but to study hard when it comes to our scriptures and our daily readings. And so you sent me a reading plan that was like how to read the Bible in 3 months, I think it was. And that was so encouraging that I was doing it alongside you at the same time. I think we send each other book recommendations a fair amount, or if we've heard a good sermon and that kind of thing, we'll ping it across. Yeah, how else? What other things?
I think Bible reading has been one of the biggest. Prayer, not just praying for each other, but being, you know, lists of things to pray for, but also finding time in the day, making sure that it's a priority. Whenever we message each other all those videos or the monthly Zoom call, some of the first things on the agenda are how is your relationship with God? And that gives us permission to say, well, do you know what, not great this month. And then for the other one to listen and say, well, here's what you should do. I've really enjoyed that. That's been great over the last 15, 20 years. Book recommendations have been really, really inspiring. Not just church leadership stuff, but fiction stuff as well, the fun stuff too. So yeah. I find you encouraging.
Oh, thanks.
That's nice, isn't it?
Lovely.
Wonderful. There's Ben. He's a good guy. So what does the Bible say about friendship? Well, firstly, if you're looking at a biblical Christian perspective around friendship, then a friendship, it has to be faithful. The book of Proverbs says this: a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. A biblical understanding of friendship is one that is present in good times and bad. And you'll see many parallels throughout the Bible between friendship and marriage when reading the Bible, and that is for a good reason. Being a friend is a serious commitment, and it's a relationship that transcends fun and joy and just good times, but it is a deep and it's a resource in times of pain. Now, in Hebrew culture, when someone dies, the close family for the next 7 days are required to stay at home in a tradition called Shiva. And during that period, mourners remain at home, and friends and family, they visit those in mourning to give their condolences and provide comfort. And that process, dating back to biblical times, formalizes the natural way an individual confronts and overcomes grief. Shiva allows for the individual to express their sorrow, to discuss the loss of a loved one, and slowly re-enter society. I heard just this week that someone, after losing their dad, had to go back to work the next day. The idea is that if you're visiting a friend who is mourning, you enter the house, and your responsibility is to sit in complete silence until they want to speak. It comes from the book of Job, one of the oldest books in our Bible, and it says this: when Job's 3 friends, Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite, heard about all the troubles that had come upon him, they set out from their homes and met together by agreement to go and sympathize with him and comfort him. When they saw him from a distance, they could hardly recognize him. They began to weep aloud, and they tore their robes and sprinkled dust on their heads. Then they sat on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights. No one said a word to him because they saw how great his suffering was. Christian biblical friendship is faithful, and it's also real. In Ecclesiastes, it says this: 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up. Now, you might recognize this Bible passage from wedding services and the passage about a cord of 3 strands not easily broken, also from Ecclesiastes. They're actually passages written about friendship. And look at the assumption here. If either of them falls down, if they fall down, then one should be there to help them up. A biblical vision of friendship includes the help when you fall. Now, this, of course, could be up on a hike up Mount Snowdon, but it's probably going to be more likely that when your life feels like it's falling away. I met with someone just this week who was going through one of the toughest times in his life. And he said if it wasn't for his faith, his wife, and good friends from church, he simply wouldn't know what to do. But that involves a risk. Are you willing to let people in? We all desire depth of friendship for sure, but sometimes to get there, we have to be willing to go first. When I was in my late teens, I struggled with pornography and was in a cycle of watching things I shouldn't watch, then coming to church, saying sorry to Jesus, boldly declaring, this is the last time. And then when I was angry, hurting, tired, lonely, or lazy, I would go back to it. Like it says in the book of Proverbs, as a dog returns to his vomit, so fools repeat their folly. How good is that Bible verse? Get that tattooed on your arm. It's a pretty good one. But what brought an end to that whole cycle was downloading software that sent any questionable websites to my two best friends. To bring friends along on that journey of pain and struggle is incredibly exposing, but it leads to growth. Because biblical friendships are real. And they're also intentional. Hebrews 10 says this, and let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. Now, I'm someone who loves to be around people most of the time, and I'm an off-the-scale extrovert. At the end of a busy week, loads of evenings out and a weekend away, I'll look at my wife and I'll say, so who are we going to have over tonight for board games? Like, I genuinely recharge around people. Other extroverts, make some noise. That's a terrible expression of extroversion. Introverts, make some noise. They did way better. What's up with you? However, one of my least favorite interactions is with people you haven't seen for a really long time, and the only thing you can really talk about or discuss is nostalgic moments. The do you remember whens, or where did that person end up? Do you know, I hate those kind of conversations. I find they get very boring very quickly. And we were at a conference recently, and I saw an old friend from college who I spent a lot of time with over those 3 years. And we have children at a similar age and stage, and we share a lot of hobbies and interests. I saw him in a restaurant that we were having dinner with our staff team. And I asked how old his child was, and he told me. First, he told me that he's 7. And second, he told me that he also have 2 other children. And I was suddenly overwhelmed with a sense of grief. I couldn't not think, I've just missed a lot. Because friendship doesn't happen by accident. It has to be an intentional move. You can't expect friendships to exist from a one-way relationship or expect them to grow by osmosis. If you want friendships to deepen, you cannot neglect meeting together. And someone at this church, who I love dearly, recently said to me, I'm struggling, I asked them if I could share this, and they were fine with it. They said, I'm struggling to get to know anyone at church. And I said, well, which service do you go to? And they said, well, sometimes I go to the 9 a.m., but when I can't, I go to the 11 a.m. But recently I've been going to the 6 a.m. too, but I have to leave as soon as it finishes because I have work early the next morning. And so I was like, okay, well, what groups have you gone to? And they said, well, there are a couple of groups I like the look of, but one night a week I have a quiet night just for myself. And then the other free night of my week, I go to a swimming class, so I probably couldn't attend any. And I was like, okay, cool. Have you joined any teams yet? And they're like, no, well, I'm going to wait until I get to know some people before I sign up to a team. If you want to get to know people, hear me. Commit to a service. Say hello to someone. Invite someone for coffee. Join a group. Join a team. Take ownership for your friendships and invest in them. Friendships do not happen by mistake. They take diarizing, making space, and committing. But also Christian friendships have to be encouraging. 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 11 says this, therefore, encourage one another and build one another up just as you are doing. The word encourage literally means to fill someone's heart up. And I love the theme of encouragement that is consistent throughout Scripture around the gathering of Christians in the New Testament. When Christians gather, whether it's a church or for a coffee, it should be an encouraging moment. People should have their heart filled. If you have one goal when meeting a friend, it should be to encourage them. And note that it doesn't say, when you're feeling super happy and super positive, or when everything's going your way, or when it feels like the Lord is shining his face upon you, then encourage. There is an assumption that both people who are meeting will have something to encourage the other person about and build them up. This isn't to say you have to fake it and pretend you're happy, but even if you're at worst, you can find something good in the person that you are meeting to encourage them in. This week, it's been a difficult week for me personally. The Venn diagram of ministry and personal life and friendships and relationships have all kind of overlapped. But the amount of text that I've received from people that have been encouraging has been an extreme blessing. Even one person who is literally having the worst moment of their life insisted on taking me out for breakfast this week to bless me. Encouragement is both parties' responsibility when meeting. Let me tell you this, unless your friend is a qualified therapist, your friend is not a qualified therapist. The kindest thing you can sometimes do for your friend is to invest in therapy financially and focus on encouraging our friends and not using our friendships as cheap therapy. I knew I needed therapy a few years ago because my wife told me I was getting leaky. It's a term she uses when all my emotions are coming out in every space, not just the safe places. And you know what? When I started getting therapy, do you know what happened? Genuinely, I noticed friends started inviting me out and they wanted to hang out with me, and it wasn't me just seeking their friendship. Have to be encouraging. But also, Christian friendships, biblical friendships are nurturing. 1 Peter 4, 8-10 says this, above all, keep loving one another earnestly, since love covers a multitude of sins. Show hospitality to one another without grumbling. As each has received a gift, use it to serve one another as good stewards of God's varied grace. Friendships from a biblical perspective is not just about having a good time with a couple of beers watching WWE on Netflix. Although, who has watched the Royal Rumble from last night? Yes, come on, a few of us, we're getting braver. I know there's more of you. It can involve that, of course it can. But you should leave having been hanging out with Christian friends, having felt loved, having experienced hospitality, and seeing some of your mates' gifts on display. I don't mean Christians who play guitar and every time you meet with them, they're like, oh, can I tell you another song I've learned? That's not what, we don't need that anymore, guys. Hang the guitar up and sit down, all right? I'm saving all your friends a favor. Yeah, I'm getting a few clicks. Please, do it. To the ladies in the room, let me give you a sneak peek into how guys do friendships real quick, all right? Imagine the scene, low lighting, probably a pub. Hey mate, how's things? Yeah, great, thanks. Did you watch the match last night? Yeah, nightmare scenes. How's work? Yeah, it's all right, better than nothing. Shame the same can't be said about you. How's the kids? You know, growing up fast. How about you? Grr. Cool. Should we just play pool in silence and occasionally comment on the sport that's playing on the big TV behind me? Sounds like a plan. And then we'll do that for 2 hours, and then we'll go home. Lads, am I telling the truth? Yeah. We have to do better. We have to do better. Love one another earnestly, the Bible writer says. If you really value a friendship, tell your friend you value the friendship. My wife gets very concerned sometimes when I'm on the phone to Ben, because at the end of every call, I say, see you later, love you lots. She's like, who is he? I don't do it to everyone, please. And he doesn't reciprocate, ever. He never returns it. Ever. I know. If you love someone, tell them. If you want to invest in a friendship, tell the other person you want to invest in the friendship. It was a game changer for me and Ben years ago when we were like, we're kind of doing this coy thing where we're meeting up every now and then, having a great time. Should we actually make this intentional? Should we actually meet up? Should we actually ask each other about the deep questions of life? Should we actually challenge each other around our faith and how we're treating our wives and how we're raising our kids? Should we actually do that? Or should we just meet up every now and then, play a ball game, go home? Nurture your friends. Banter is fine. But if that's all people experience, then pretty quickly they will try and find love, depth, and meaning in other avenues. Nurture your friendships. And finally, a Christian friendship should be direct. Proverbs 27, verse 6 says this: faithful are the wounds of a friend, profuse are the kisses of an enemy. Faithful are the wounds of a friend. Biblical friendships give the permission to the other to be direct. We need people to tell us what our blind spots are. And if we're going to become more like Jesus, sometimes our spouses or our boyfriends or girlfriends love us too much that we have to listen to the feedback from our friends. If you fancy a challenge today, then I want you to do this. We were challenged, our staff team went on a conference recently, and we were given this challenge, and I did it, and it was illuminating, right? You got to text one friend, and probably the friend you least want to text these questions to. It'll work better. But you need to text your friend 3 questions. Question number 1, what can you count on me for? Question number 2, what can't you count on me for? And question number 3, how has our relationship altered because of that? I'll tell you what my friend responded when I texted him. It wasn't Ben, it was another friend. I thought Ben would be too nice. He said, when he responded, he said, I can count on you for biblical wisdom and fun times. I was like, oh, that's nice, isn't it? I'll show you a bit of Bible and pick up the atmosphere. Nice. What can't you count on me for? He said, picking up the phone when I call. I was like, ugh. And I totally understand. He calls me and I'll say, oh, mate, now's not a good moment. Can I call later? And then how has this impacted our friendship? And he said, in an emergency, I wouldn't call you first. I thought, ugh. Faithful, though, are the wounds of a friend. It's really good feedback. It means now I need to work on that and realize that when he calls, it's probably something that he wants to talk about that's pretty urgent. The truth is, the way we offer friendship, the way we safeguard and protect friendship, the way we honor friendship and nurture him, we do it because it's a reflection of what Jesus says about us. The thing that Jesus calls us more than anything else is friends. John 15, verse 13 says this: greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friend. The greatest love you'll ever know is not from a spouse or a boyfriend, girlfriend, even on Valentine's Day. It's not even a mate. The greatest love you'll ever know is the love of Jesus, who calls us friends because he sees our realness. He sees our mess. He sees our sin and still chooses to come close, to take that burden on himself even and die so that we may know true freedom. And maybe you've never sought that kind of relationship before. Maybe to you, Jesus has always been your boss or a manager or a spoil sport, but you've kept him at arm's distance. But hear the invitation today. He is calling you to become his friend. If you'd like to experience that kind of love, I'd love you to pray this prayer just where you're sat. If you want to close your eyes just for a moment. Jesus, I thank you for calling me friend. That even when I don't act like it, even when I keep you at arm's distance, even when I put things in the way in between me and you still pursue a relationship. You are faithful to the end. I thank you that you died for me. That you took the sin, the stuff that separated me and God, you took it upon your shoulders and died so that that sin had a proper death. Thank you that you died for me. But I thank you that you rose again so I may have hope. I may have hope even in the midst of the darkest times that you are with me by your Spirit. And so Jesus, I pray I'd know you as a friend tonight and tomorrow and the day after that. A friend that is there in good times and bad. That is faithful, that is real, that's being investing in me, intentional with me. It's encouraging and nurturing and direct. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.